Welcome to Midweek Mysteries, and thank you for being here. I am your host, Nick Ryan. If you're new to the show, Midweek Mysteries is a shorter version of our full-length Sunday episodes, where we also enjoy giving a personal shout-out to our newest supporters, so please be sure to tune in. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can become a patron at patreon.com/paranormalmysteries, or if you prefer to make a one-time donation, please visit buymeacoffee.com/paranormal. And as always, subscribing to the podcast and sharing it with your friends is one of the best ways to show your support, and we appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's see what today's storytellers have to say. Today's first midweek mystery comes to us from Bernice. Bernice says, "Hi there, Nick. I've been listening to your podcast for the past few months, and it has compelled me to tell my own story of when my family and I lived in a haunted house in Reedley, up in Northern California. This is a bit long, so please bear with me. The house itself was built in 1963 and was a very long and wide house consisting of 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. It still had much of the vintage furniture and 60s decor. It was like it was frozen in time. The moment we stepped foot into the house, the energy felt off. We felt unwelcome. Well, fast forward a few months, my brother and I went with a friend to the nearby river and forest to hang out. My brother developed hives from something he brushed up against in the forest, and he ran back to the house to get his allergy medication. We weren't far, so my friend and I ran after him. As soon as we got there, however, my brother ran out from the back door, screaming and crying. He was terrified. Like I said, the house is long and wide. On one end you have a bedroom and bathroom. In the middle you have the laundry room, the kitchen, and then the living room. And at the far end of the house are 3 main bedrooms, where my mother, my brother, and I slept. Before leaving the house, I closed all the doors in the house. I also turned off all the lights, and most importantly, I locked the 2 main front doors. These doors had 3 locking mechanisms, 2 at the top that you had to turn with your hands, like levers. They also had middle locks, and then 2 more of the lever-like locks at the bottom. My brother yelled that when he stepped foot into the house, he noticed that all of the doors in the house were wide open. All of the lights were on, and the door to the hallway that linked to the 2 main bedrooms slammed shut violently. This couldn't have happened due to wind, since the doors opened inward to the hallway, linking to the bedrooms, and the length of the house made that impossible anyway. Most importantly, the front doors were wide open. There was no evidence of a break-in, and nothing was stolen. After that, more activity in the house ensued. I started waking up at 3 a.m. every morning. On one of these occasions, one of my antique dolls that had a string on the back started talking. It shouldn't have, because the string and the voice box were broken. On another occasion, my mother was showering, and she had left her keys in her bedroom. However, she heard a loud clank come from the direction of the living room, and she called out to see if my brother and I were at home, which we weren't. She got out of the shower to find that the keys had somehow been dropped in the middle of the living room. There are plenty of other things that happened in that house in Reedley in general, but I'll save those for another time, since this was pretty long. Thank you for having this platform that allows people to share their paranormal experiences and realize that we are not alone. Take care, Bernice." Our next midweek mystery comes to us from Luke. Luke's story is called Another Neck of the Woods. Luke says, "Hi, Nick. I am 23 years old and from New Zealand. I happened to search for a paranormal podcast via Spotify. Since I drive a self-loading logging truck for a living, I have plenty of hours to myself, and well, a little company is sometimes nice. Listening to others share their stories prompted me to share mine. It's a little different, as cliche as that sounds, but a bit of a nice, warm spin to the whole scary stereotype of the paranormal. I've been aware and intrigued by the paranormal since I was a little kid. Going back 13 years now, I went to an old boarding school that was 110 plus years old, which is where I first stumbled across the first sighting of what I knew back then as unexplainable. However, the story I'm going to share is one much more recent, and one that continues on to this day, even as I'm writing this. I drive a self-loading logging lorry, which means I am alone at whichever time of the night or morning loading my truck with logs, most of the time very deep in the forests of the North Island. Forestry in New Zealand is very large and a big part of our culture, going back even to the indigenous days. One evening around 10:30 or 11:30 p.m., I was on a logging skid out in the ranges of a place which will remain confidential, as I will be known around this area. This place has a lot of history, from our fallen logging brothers to tragic deaths and other people known to have passed in the area. The very first time I became aware of a presence, I had an overwhelming feeling of eyes on me. Not a scary feeling, but almost a nice presence, knowing that I wasn't alone. The next evening, I returned to the same spot, and I was greeted with the same feeling, except this time, while on my loader, I felt a slight tap on my boot, just one, but enough to know that whatever was there wanted me to know. I naturally say good morning or good evening as a sign of respect wherever I go, so I responded to this by saying, "Hello, I felt that. I'm here to do my job and I mean you no harm." Not once feeling afraid, nor scared, just accompanied. The next few mornings, there was no physical activity. However, I did continue to speak to the spirit, even at times having a joke, which is within my personality, and also, I believe this spirit has taken a liking to me. I have a sleeper bunk in my truck, and underneath the bed are pull-out drawers. One is a fridge and the other is a storage compartment. I would often find my fridge wide open once I finished loading, my stereo being turned up to near full blast, and things being moved around my truck while I was outside loading it. Whatever this spirit is, it's most definitely friendly, and I believe it was looking out for me, as I always seem to run into no trouble while in the area. Something that happens all the time elsewhere, as it's part of the job. I've noticed that since these occurrences have happened, things in my home have as well. Me and my partner are aware that this spirit may have taken so much of a liking that it could have latched onto me. It never causes us any harm. It only moves things here and there, almost as if he is exactly like me, a little cheeky prankster. I have never seen him, and I don't know his name, nor do I wish to communicate with him. I just know that he's looking over me, while I'm alone doing what some consider a dangerous job. Maybe one day he'll show himself, or maybe not. I know he's around. In fact, I can feel him right now, as I'm writing this. Thanks for reading. I just wanted to blurt everything out as I thought of it, leaving no detail astray. Being in the forests of New Zealand every night during the weeks, I have a lot of stories to share. I encounter something that I can't logically explain nearly every night, but I'm not afraid. I have my little buddy watching over me. Let me know if you want any more. Thanks, Luke. Our next story of the night comes from JL. JL's story is called Tales of the Unknown. JL says, "Hello, Nick. I discovered your podcast last March, and I've been listening to it ever since. I am a lover of the paranormal and supernatural, and would like to share a couple of stories that I could only classify as strange. My first story happened back when I was a child, around 6 or 7 years old. I was playing hide-and-seek with my cousins at their house. It wasn't a huge house, just a 2-bedroom bungalow. The bedrooms were separated by a wooden wall that had a gap in the bottom. I'm not sure what this kind of wall was called. Since we were kind of small kids, my cousin and I could fit quite easily into the gap and travel between the 2 bedrooms. It made a very good hiding place, too. On that day, most of the adults were out of the house. I think it was a Sunday, because they were all at the market. It was only me, my brother, and 3 cousins who were at home. As we played hide-and-seek, we were all surprised when my cousin shouted out that the grown-ups had finally arrived. Excited for whatever they brought us from the market, we all left our hiding places and went out to greet them. But when we reached the yard, there was no one there, no car, and no adults. Needless to say, we were all very mad because my cousin just spoiled a game that was going very well. My cousin swore that she thought the grown-ups had arrived because, according to her, she saw a pair of feet with red nail polish walk into my grandparents' room. She was hiding under the gap in the wall. The pair of feet walked into the door and stopped just in front of her. She thought that it was our grandmother. None of us kids had red nail polish. Even our eldest cousin had clean nails. But just to give her the benefit of the doubt, we decided to check the adults' toes as well. We waited a while until they finally arrived. As expected, neither my aunt or my grandmother had red nail polish. The second story happened to my family. I grew up in a strict Catholic household, and it was a yearly tradition that we go to the Good Friday procession. That year, my youngest sister just turned 2, and as a child, many agreed that she was quite cute and charming. She was fair, chubby, and had small eyes. When we headed home after the procession, we were surprised to see my sister's face covered in what looked like blue ink. It was as if she had opened a bottle of ink and smeared it across her face. Confused at what had happened, my mother just shrugged it off and went ahead and gave my sister a bath. The ink was easily cleaned off my sister's face, but then it appeared on her arms and hands. The weirdest part? The ink started to appear on everyone. My mother, father, my brother, and me as well. I had spots of ink appear on my hands, which would disappear after being washed off, only to reappear on my legs, my other hand, and even my chest. The same happened with the others, although it was my sister who had ink appear in splotches. Mine looked like little marks that came from a bleeding pen, but for my sister, it looked like she had poured a bottle on her arms, her face, and her feet. As advised by my grandfather, we went to see a witch doctor, but the witch doctor couldn't give us any answer as well. According to her, it seemed like some entity or another witch doctor was playing tricks on us. Come Easter Sunday morning, all the ink was gone. My last 2 stories happened to me and a group of people. One happened in school. I was a high school freshman. Our drafting classes were held in the drawing room. Since we had an old teacher who was very strict, we seldom made noise during classes. One day, we were having a drawing quiz. Again, everyone was quiet, and the only noises heard were the sound of pen touching paper. Then, we heard a humming sound. It started out soft, and as I found out later, everyone thought that it was one of us, trying to calm nerves or something. So we mostly chose to ignore whoever was humming, and just continued on with our test. Then, the humming grew louder, until it seemed like whoever was humming was just sitting beside you. I remember taking a peek at my seatmate, just to see if she was the one humming. The atmosphere in the room had changed to an uncomfortable silence. I think everyone wanted to say something by now, but was too scared. Finally, the humming grew loud enough that my teacher decided to break the tension by saying, "Whoever is singing, your classmates are still taking a test." Everyone looked up. My teacher was peering at us through his glasses, but the look of confusion on his face was unmistakable. We then looked at each other. The humming gradually softened and then stopped. The class ended and we all stood up to leave. It was only when we reached our classroom that we all burst out, talking about what had just happened. My last story happened in the dormitory. It was exam week, and pretty much everyone stayed up late to study. The dormitory's rooftop had been converted into a study area, and my roommates and I were staying there. There were 5 of us occupying one table, but we weren't alone, as there were other girls occupying other tables. I was halfway through my biology reviewer when I heard a soft, sobbing noise. It sounded like a girl, and the cry was full of hurt and loneliness, as if grieving for a dearly departed. I didn't budge or look up, because for some reason I decided that I was just imagining things, perhaps an effect of my lack of sleep, but the sobbing continued. None of the other girls were budging from their spots, so again, I decided to ignore it. One by one, the other tables cleared. Then, one roommate finally asked if we wanted to return to our room. Everyone unanimously agreed. When we reached our room, she asked if we had heard something weird back at the rooftop. "You mean someone crying?" I said. "Oh my God, I thought I was the only one," she replied. We all reacted in a mixture of panic and excitement. We even went to the next room and asked them about it. They said that they did, and it was why they decided to leave, even if it was barely past midnight. Until this day, I still can't decide if I had experienced something paranormal, since I barely hear stories about groups of people experiencing the same weird things. I would also like to hear what you think of these. Could they be true paranormal phenomena? Thank you for reading, and more power to your show. Best, JL. Our next story of the night comes from Jennifer. Jennifer's story is called Lucky Lady. Jennifer says, Dear Nick, I have heard your podcast a few times. I have had 3 different paranormal experiences, but my first one has stuck with me the most. It takes place at my father's house, which was built in the 1970s and has been owned by my father since 1995. My experience happened when I was 16. The words Lucky Lady were engraved on a sidewalk leading to the backyard from the day that we moved in until fairly recently. When I was 16, I woke up at 3 a.m. one day. I remember this because I remember looking at my bedside clock. I looked from my clock to the open closet. There, I saw the transparent head of a blonde lady. I couldn't see the rest of her body. I blinked, and she was still there. I didn't feel threatened by her at all. I told my dad, but he's a huge skeptic. A few years ago, I returned to my father's house for a weekend, and I slept in my childhood bedroom. I opened the closet doors in the hope of catching another glimpse of this ghost, but while I felt as though I was being watched, I never saw her again. The lucky lady that was engraved in the sidewalk disappeared a few years ago. Maybe my father covered it up. I will always associate the ghost I saw in this house to that phrase. I feel she may be my guardian angel. As we come to the end of this edition of Midweek Mysteries, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for tuning in, and of course, for supporting the podcast. And a special thank you goes out to Bernice, Luke, JL, and Jennifer for writing in and sharing their experience with all of us. If you've witnessed something unexplainable, and you'd like to have your story shared on the podcast, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or visit paranormalmysteriespodcast.com and click on the Tell Your Story link. All of our contact information can be found in the show notes. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Sunday with our next full-length episode. From all of us at the Paranormal Mysteries Podcast, thank you for listening, and remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.